So, overcoming your barriers. When we're talking about barriers here, we're talking about barriers for long-term change. So, basically, nobody wants to continue going from feeling good to feeling bad, losing weight, gaining weight, and just constantly going up and down. So, we're going to get quite deep here, and some of you might not want to hear some of the things that are going to be said, but sometimes change is uncomfortable and it's tough to hear. Like we say, the truth sometimes is tough to hear. And a good thing that I like to use, you might have seen this quote that I've used before, and it's an Einstein quote, is we cannot solve a problem with the same level of thinking we used when creating them. Okay, so we cannot solve a problem with the same level of thinking we used when creating them. So the problem being that you've probably yo-yoed in the past or not found a pattern that you've managed to keep going forwards for long-term change. So we're going to try and change that thinking and overcome those barriers today. So before we get into it, we need to realize that your mind is a more powerful tool than your body. If your body's willing, but your mind isn't set right, then really you're not going to make any long-term changes. Okay? Mindset is the number one priority to creating a leaner lifestyle. And if you aren't willing to change it and you're not willing to build it stronger than a rock solid bicep or glute, then again, you're just going to set yourself up for a short-term fix again. So this training could be the difference between you changing your long-term life or just going forwards and backwards and going in that same old pattern that you've probably had in the past. And it'll not only benefit yourself, but having that understanding of how you can help others around you as well. So it's going to benefit others around you. So what's the problem? The problem is that quite often we have a short-term focus rather than a long-term focus. So we're thinking weeks and months rather than thinking years and decades and rushing into things. So it's quite easy to rush into the easy stuff at that moment, thinking that I need to go do some exercise. I need to cut out all crap. And basically that's just masking the real underlying problems and just focusing on really what is the easiest stuff for most people. And not willing to change. So changing by education. What you're changing, you're learning a new skill. A leaner lifestyle is a skill. And you were willing to take the time to learn to drive. You didn't do that automatically. So why would you not be willing to take the time to learn how to live a leaner lifestyle? It's a skill that you're going to have for life. And not willing to do the hard bit is the problem. So knowing that there's a difference between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And we're going to look into this. And the hard bit is trying to change your unconscious mind. And the conscious mind is the bit that's at the forefront, and the unconscious mind is often overlooked. And we're going to get into that. Another problem is you're not willing to get out of comfort zone. Comfort zone because it feels like the easier option. But I bet probably most people don't feel too comfy in their comfort zone. So think about that. Most people won't feel too comfy in what they class as their comfort zone, and they do want to get out. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover 8 of the most common barriers. And again, remember, these are barriers we're talking about, mindset barriers to creating long-term change. And as we go through these, see if you can relate to one or more of these barriers as I explain the type of person. Okay, so number 1, I don't have time, I'm too busy, now is not the right time. So at some point, the stuff that this person is prioritizing over their health, it could be work, families, etc., that's going to have to stop, as you can't do it anymore when your physical or mental health doesn't allow it. And for this person, time's not really the issue, it's the mindset issue. It could also be a planning issue as well. And this person at some point talked themselves into prioritizing other things over their health. And we're going to get into this a little bit deeper, but looking after yourself first, if you don't look after yourself first, it could be too late and you can't look after others around you, loved ones or work-related people around you. And this type of person might feel things like guilty, thinking things like it's selfish to spend time exercising rather than playing or looking after kids, or it's selfish having to do a workout because I've got work to do. So yeah, we're going to get into this deeper. Number 2, there is just too much temptation. So I like to call this the instant gratification trap. Okay, so temptation is an instant gratification trap. And what this means, it's a habit that you forego short-term pain by indulging in sort of pleasures that ultimately result in long-term pain. And it is a form of self-sabotage where you can get caught up in indulging in these temptations, and it's basically costing your long-term goals. So examples of this are snacking, drinking alcohol, binge watching TV, endless scrolling on social media, and endless online shopping are just some examples of common temptations that people think there's too much of. And getting caught up on this sort of instant gratification can lead to increased stress, increased anxiety, and basically a lot of overwhelm. And if it's continued and persistent in indulging in these temptations and this instant gratification, it's going to lead to long-term dissatisfaction, so long-term unhappiness and unfulfillment. Going into number 3, I don't want to be boring. I like drinking. I like socializing. So the problem people often have, or this person has, is that they think the commitment to changing their lifestyle is becoming some sort of Olympic trained athlete rolled into and mixed with a Michelin star chef. And if they don't do that, then they're not going to change. And why this is usually down to this person having incorrect associations and potentially past misinformation and poor education. Number 4, the all or nothing approach. So this person is constantly searching for the perfect time to start. Often they'll think that Christmas, birthdays, holidays, christenings, probably every weekend, don't count. And that really doesn't leave many days to the year to make any progress. This person will always have an end goal in mind, and they'll often rely on willpower. And we're going to get into willpower versus habits soon as well. And this type of person will always think that one bad day will turn into stuff this, I'll start again next week. That could be on a Monday or a Tuesday. And they'll always probably burn out pretty quickly. They'll stop and they'll go on that process over and over again, usually following some sort of super strict diet or training plan, cutting out all enjoyment. And again, they'll get bored and then they'll stop until another time where they'll start again, the all or nothing approach. And again, this is linked to what I've touched on, the conscious versus the subconscious mind. The conscious, the bit that's at the forefront, wants to make progress, but the subconscious, the bit that still wants to be a little bit lazy and not do anything, they're pulling in different directions and they're not aligned. So really, there's not making any long-term progress. And this type of person might see some fast, quick results, but they'll definitely rebound. And often linked to being a yo-yo dieter or a yo-yo exerciser. Number 5, I hate exercise. This is a chore. I hate healthy food. This type of person will find it a chore. Their exercise and nutrition will be very sporadic. They'll not stick to a certain plan. They'll do a bit here and a bit there. They'll generally opt for unhealthy food majority of the time because it'll be the easier option. And that has become a habit of theirs. There's been a relationship that's created with being inactive and eating junk food with comfort and ease. And this person generally has low self-worth and low self-regard. And they potentially don't really fully love themselves and not being able to live life to their full potential. This person will probably have a lack of understanding on long-term health implications and the impact not only on themselves, but also the impact on others around them. So we've got 3 more. Number 6, I can't wait to get into that bikini. I can't wait to get into that wedding suit. I can't wait to be 20 pounds lighter. So this is a barrier because this person will always be result focused or result driven. And they'll always be looking into the future rather than being in the present and process focused. They'll again be driven by willpower rather than creating habits. And we're going to touch on why this is a big problem soon. And this type of person will only validate their success by external factors. So things like the clothes, what weight they've lost on the scales, rather than focusing on internal validation, the feelings of good, how their mood is, their energy levels. And yet again, the conscious versus the subconscious mind, they're going in different directions. The goal's at the forefront of the mind, but the subconscious still wants to be lazy and get away from the fears of a new lifestyle potentially. Maybe he's thinking that it'll be too hard to keep it up long term. So this type of person will stop because habits haven't been created and potentially the goals are wrong. There could be an issue with that goal setting. And again, this type of person is linked to a yo-yo dieter and a yo-yo exerciser. Number 7, it's too hard. It's not fair on me. It's not fair for me. I can't, I won't. So just so people know, those who might be watching this replay at a later date, we're currently going through a pandemic with the coronavirus. Who here has said this when lockdown happened? Because the gyms are closed, there might have been suboptimal conditions. It's not fair, everything's ruined. My 2020 goals have been completely blown out of the water. Probably a lot of people. This type of person will easily give up when things get a little bit tougher, or if things aren't perfect and the conditions aren't perfect for them. And this type of person will often blame other things or other people, things like not having the right equipment, not the facilities being right, opening times, things like that. They might blame family or job. And then the 8th most common barrier is it's too expensive. So this type of person will often prioritize materialistic things over their own health. And they'll have a big misconception around nutrition. And again, linking it back to thinking that people might have to be feeling like they're a Michelin star chef, thinking that they have to buy the most expensive food all the time or having to buy the most expensive equipment in order to make progress. And this type of person will always or most often have a focus on the instant gratification over what's called the delayed gratification. So they're thinking short term rather than long term. They're not really getting the long term investment aspect, and that's been completely missed out. So just before we move on, I'm going to open the chat. Have a little think, take 60 seconds, pop it in the chat box. If anybody wants to actually come on live and share what stood out most for them, that would be great. If not, just chat it in pop it in the chat box, and it'll be great to hear a little bit of feedback about what stood out for you most. So take 60 seconds to do that now. If anybody wants to come on, just type share. Can you relate to any of those 8 barriers? Can you relate to more than one of those barriers? Little comment in the chat. Or if you want to unmute yourself and just start talking, that's fine. Recognize a lot of them. A little bit of temptation, a little bit of chore with nutrition. Yeah. Nick, Ollie, yeah, a couple of each. Good. Definitely 1 and 2. 2, I think, relates maybe fear of being able to do it. Good. Excellent. Everybody's starting to think about these things. Once you get an understanding and an awareness of where you are, then you can start actually doing something about it. And we're going to go into solutions soon. Temptation. Yeah. These might be past things. Temptation's easy to blame, 100%. These might be past things that you're now sort of overcoming now, or you're looking to overcome right now. So you might be starting to do all the right things. Excellent. Mix of instant gratification, temptation, short-term thinking. Yep. All common barriers. Everybody will definitely be able to relate to at least one or a couple of these things. So, excellent. Right. We're going to move on. So now we know that, we're aware of these things, we're going to get into some solutions. It's time to start flipping the thinking on all of those barriers to change. And we're talking about a mindset shift. You might be able to relate to one of those things, or you might be able to relate to multiple. What I would suggest is that, and I'd highly recommend that you come back to this training, because there's going to be a lot of information that comes here to take in and to digest. And everybody's going to have their own different personal barriers. So it's important that you come back and utilize the ones that are specific for you. So we're going to look firstly at the time barrier. I don't have time, etc. So how do we overcome this? It's about getting the shift in guilt. So shifting away from the guilt and shifting your priorities. So it's the wrong mindset to think guilty, basically. It's exactly the opposite of that. You're being selfless in looking after yourself. And I'm going to use the flight attendant analogy. So every flight attendant or flight attendants will say this, and you might not take it in as much now, but everybody will hear it. Please place the mask over your own nose and mouth before helping others. Okay? Please place the mask over your own nose and mouth before helping others. And what this means is that basically you're putting your mask over yourself, so you're looking after your own health first to put yourself at optimal and prime condition in order to enable you to look after those around you. If you don't do that, you're not going to be able to look after those around you. That's basically what it means. And going more deeper into that is, what happens if you break? Nothing at all will get done. So always keep that in mind. You might think that you're too busy to look after yourself, but at some point, if you totally neglect that, both physically and mentally, you're going to break, and then that thing that was really important is actually never going to get done. So it's about putting yourself first and making sure you're at optimal condition. Sticking with the time, ways we can get around this is setting what I call non-negotiables. So what non-negotiables are times for you that you're spending on you, they're planned and structured into your calendar, and nothing gets in the way of those. So for me, my non-negotiables might be I exercise 3 times a week, I walk a couple of times a week, and I spend at least 1 hour on self-development a week. Like, nothing will get in the way of those. So have a little think, write them down, set your non-negotiables and factor them in. And that boils down to structure and better planning as well. Again, it's just about thinking about prioritizing number one at all times, and have a think about this, how this will directly impact your performance and your efficiency. Not only you, but also your loved ones, your family, your relationships, and in your careers too. So going into number 2, temptation, too much temptation. How do we overcome that? It's important to get into the habit of delayed gratification. So this is the opposite to instant gratification. Once you get into delayed gratification, it's going to give you more control over your life, over your decisions, and over your actions. And you've got to think that avoiding temptation, yes, it's tough, especially when you're first starting out. But the pain that you experience avoiding it is a necessary part of achieving a better version of you. Think you're constantly better in yourself. So the more you can practice delayed gratification, the better you'll get. And we're going to get into some steps about how it can help you with delayed gratification soon. So also question the things that are the temptations. And I'm going to run through some examples now. So are those online shopping deliveries really making you happier and feel better? Or question, are they just causing you more money worries? Are those sugary snacks really making you happy? Flip it. Or are they causing more spikes and dips in your energy and mood levels throughout the day? Is that beer or wine really taking your stresses away? Or is it making you work less effectively, causing more work or family stress? Is that comparison on social media really motivating you? Or is it making you unhappy, chasing an unrealistic goal that isn't relevant to you and your lifestyle? Is that binge watch on Netflix really making you relax? Or is it taking you away from the priorities, causing you more stress and worry the next day? So it's trying to flip what you thought was helping into questioning, actually, is it really helping you long term? So you've got to flip the thinking with that. And we're just going to run through here 5 top tips to try and avoid that instant gratification trap. So the temptations, and flip it towards the delayed gratification. Number 1, having a plan to follow. As members of Leaner Lifestyle, we've sort of got you covered on that one. Number 2, identify impossible hurdles to overcome so that you can prepare rather than succumb to them. So an example of this is when you're having meals out or social gatherings. If you've got an alternative plan, so you might have read the menu prior to going out, or you might have in your head better choices for what you're going to drink, etc., and eat. Number 3, having a strong support network who can help you overcome difficult situations. Hello, welcome to the Leaner Lifestyle community. Everybody can have each other's back. Anybody who's feeling low at certain points, other people within the community can pull them back up. So it's important to have that support network. Number 4, this is important, creating boundaries to avoid falling into temptations. So an example of this is not having drink Monday to Friday, or another example is going on social media only between certain hours. You can actually get an app which doesn't allow you to open your Facebook, your Instagram, Twitter, things like that, other than hours that you specified. Okay, so there are things out there. And I think especially now it's important with everything that's going on. Again, for people who are listening to the replay, this is current pandemic situation, especially the no drink during the week. I think it's important to have boundaries, because if you don't, that's allowing bad habits to creep in, which when we come out of this are going to be much harder to break when we get back to a more normal routine. Number 5, create a reward scheme. So something that gives you permission to indulge in your pleasures, but always stay in control. So think about this. An example is, I trained 4 times this week, I will, and then fill in the blank. Could be have half a bar of chocolate or something like that. So you're rewarding yourself, but you know that you're still in control of what it is. Number 3, how do we overcome the mindset of I don't want to be boring? So this barrier mainly boils down to an understanding and education. How to ditch the diet, and ditching the diet mentality is something that I've covered in a different webinar. So please make reference back to the online training lab and have a look at all of that. But basically, it's about an understanding about how to be flexible, avoiding the super strict diets, avoiding and understanding that you don't have to cook every single meal, you don't have to eat the same things every day, you don't have to avoid social events, you don't have to be a hermit. And some days you might have higher intake, and some days you might have lower intake, depending on what you have in your calendar. And that'll be different for everyone. Having an understanding of accountability, learning how to be accountable for your calorie intake, regardless of how good or bad it is. So looking at the nutrients, high nutrient content or low nutrient content. And then you can assess yourself and make adjustments as necessary. Without that accountability, then you're going to be at a loss. And that's when you're probably going to revert back to thinking, I need to go to the strict and boring. And flipping the mindset from short term to long term. You've got to be in it for the long run. And then that's going to cater for real life events, rather than thinking that I don't want to miss out on Christmas, birthdays, holidays, things like that, allowing them to be part of your lifestyle. And all those things that we've just touched on there, the flexibility, accountability, once you understand those, then you can incorporate those within your lifestyle long term rather than short term. Once you get that, things become much easier and much more enjoyable, and you realize you don't have to be boring. Number 4, the all or nothing approach. Again, this mainly boils down to you have to overcome it with education and understanding. An understanding of how fat loss works, the nutrient content versus how calorific it is, understanding that they are different. You can lose weight by eating crap foods or poor nutrient content foods, just the same way that you can gain weight by just eating highly nutritious foods, so healthy foods. So let that sink in. You can lose weight by eating crap, and just the same as you can gain weight by eating healthy. So if you haven't got that understanding between nutritious and calories, again, we've got a training in our training lab, which will cover that and hopefully get your understanding up on that. Again, same as we touched on number 3, it's the understanding of flexible eating and having that accountability. Understanding that calorie intake, if you have a focus and you're accountable for that, then you can be flexible. You can have a balance of nutritious foods and fun foods. So having that 80-20 approach. You've got to realize that willpower will only get you so far. You've got to start looking deeper. And by what I mean by looking deeper is that you've got to look into your daily habits. I did a training on this, again, that's in the lab, and it was about creating and destroying habits. If you're not willing to change your habits and you're just going to be willpower driven, again, it's going to get you so far. It's only going to be a short-term fix, and you're not going to create any long-lasting changes, which nobody wants deep down. This is why you've got to get your mentality right. Nobody wants to keep going backwards and forwards, yo-yoing, up and down, up and down. It's energy sapping, okay? So you need to start focusing on the process over the result. How good you feel now, rather than the possible weight loss or better fitting clothes to come. Once you start focusing on how you're feeling right now, then everything else will fall into place. So the process is important rather than the result focus. And an analogy I like to use is giving up on your goal because of one setback is like slashing your other three tires because you got a flat. So the analogy of you get one flat tire, you get a puncture, you wouldn't then proceed to puncture the other three tires. So if you have a bad day or a bad week, that doesn't mean you sabotage the full day, the full week, the full month, the full year. Some people do. No, not at all. You wouldn't do that to your car, so don't do it to your life. Number 5, I hate exercise and I hate healthy food. So how do we overcome feeling that this is a chore? You need to realize that you get one body and your body is your life vehicle. You only get one and it needs to be looked after. Otherwise, it's going to become unreliable. It'll keep breaking down and you won't get to where you want to be. And when we talk about where you want to be, we're going to go into this in a second about your aspirations. But it's a way to care about yourself. You need to start practicing some self-love and holding yourself in high regard. Or if not, finding somebody who will hold you in higher self-regard than yourself to get you to where you need to be. And some little things that you can practice are journaling how you feel after exercise, after you've ate certain good meals, and it'll open up your thinking to actually, this is more than just the external factors of looking better. It's making me feel a hell of a lot better. And it's about having an education in both exercise and nutrition. Once you have that understanding about a leaner lifestyle and leaner body shape, then you realize that it's just a byproduct to the tons and tons of other more important benefits to your physical and mental health. It's worth trying noting down your life aspirations. So your mission statement, if you like, have them present every day. Have them written up, put them somewhere that you're going to see every day. Is it your health and your self-development that's holding you back from achieving them? Very likely it could be. I guarantee whatever aspect of your life, whether that's work, career, family, charitable, personal, you'll be working closer towards them if you've got a healthier lifestyle. So getting very clear on your mission statement, your life aspirations, is going to show you the benefit of actually, I need to have this healthier lifestyle in order to achieve them. Number 6, I can't wait to get that beach body. I can't wait to lose 20 pounds. I need to get into that wedding suit. How do we overcome this thought process? Because this is just going to get you into that short-term fix. We need to think beyond that and get to the long-term. You need to have a future focus. It needs to be switched from the present. Yes, you need to switch your future focus to the present focus, The feelings of now instead of the feelings of what might be. And you need to start validating your progress more internally rather than externally. The external will follow if you get the internal. So what I mean by that is your internal feelings. You need to focus on those and validate how you're feeling, how your energy is, how your mood is, rather than focusing on your shape and scales, which is the external feelings. They will come, they will be a byproduct of the internal. Your goal setting, it's great, but it's got to go beyond the short term. You need to get really clear, you need to get really specific on the long-term goals. And an example of this is, I want to lose 20 pounds in 3 months. That's great, but we've got to go beyond that. So I want to lose 20 pounds in 3 months in a sustainable method which fits in with my lifestyle going forwards. That is way more specific and it's going way beyond just that short term. So it's great to have your goals, but you need to get more specific and start thinking long-term as well as short-term. And habits. This has come up quite a few times, but this is the difference. Habits and willpower. These are a big thing, and it's something that I've done in a different training. But you've got to dig deep into your habits. Willpower is only going to get you a certain way. It might get you that holiday beach body. It might get you into that little black dress at Christmas. But your habits are what are going to make sure that you don't have to keep doing this over and over again and really change your life. So something important that you should get really clear on is that your daily habits are a clear representation of your long-term health and body shape. Your daily habits are a clear representation of your long-term health and body shape. So if you aren't happy with your body shape for 75% of the year, then you need to do something about it. You need to change your daily habits. Number 7, it's too hard, it's not fair on me, I can't, I won't, all negative thought patterns. How do we overcome this? So you need to start realizing that suboptimal conditions doesn't mean don't do it at all. And it means, look, you've got to suck it up, you've got to work harder, and you've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That is really where the magic happens. Nobody ever achieved any greatness being comfortable. And those little feelings of accomplishment, they're going to push it even further. And what you need to try and flip is, we often think, I'm going to look for motivation. This is going to take action, and then I'm going to progress. You need to flip that into thinking, I'm going to take action. So start. I'm going to make some progress, and that's going to build my motivation. So those little feelings of accomplishments are going to build up. So once you make that action, you take that action and start, you're going to see some changes, and that's going to motivate you, rather than seeking and looking for motivation to begin with. Really important that you start practicing some daily perspective and daily gratitude. Let's be honest, we are all lucky enough to have our basic needs. We've got our roof over our head and food on the table. That's your gratitude every day, nailed on. You can build on this. Everybody's going to have different gratitudes, but that's your bread and butter. Perspective-wise, every day when you think things are tough, for instance, right now, like I say, we're going through a pandemic. There are doctors who are having to decide who lives and dies. That's tough. So at times, yes, everybody thinks they're going through tough things. It's important to put things into perspective, especially at this moment in time. Fault versus responsibility. It's important to understand this. Okay, and this is going to get quite deep. Some people might not want to hear this, but it's important to understand. Your health and body shape are solely your responsibility. No one else's. It's time that you've got to take ownership for that. You always have a choice in how to deal with any situation. It's your sole responsibility. It might be your job's fault that you're busy, but it's your responsibility how you choose to deal with that. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. It's the importance of your responsibility to overcome the issue, always. So think about that again. It doesn't matter who's at fault, but it's the importance of your responsibility to overcome it. Okay? So we've got to stop blaming others and other things. You've got to take responsibility for your life and how you choose to live it. Stop pointing the finger and whose fault it is or what's fault it is. It's just going to put you into what's called a victim mode. And when you're in victim mode, you're just going to be stuck within a suffering mode. So the real power is when you start taking responsibility of your own life. It's your life, it's your happiness. Take responsibility. And it's important to drop the entitlement. Drop the entitlement and start building the empowerment. So stop expecting the easy and the constant focusing on the negative and the why me. Start building the empowerment, the positive, the proactive, and the thinking how can. Okay, so stopping the why and thinking the how. And finally, we're going to go into, it's too expensive. How can we overcome the too expensive? Basically, it boils down to how much it will cost you if you don't invest in yourself. how much is it going to cost you if you don't invest in changing yourself? And I'm talking about how much is it going to cost your health, your happiness, your relationships, your family, your job, your hobbies. Because at some point, everything that you enjoy doing, if you don't focus on your health, then you're not going to be able to do those things. Take a moment now just to have a little think about how much you've wasted in the past on doing this short term. So the meal plans, the diet plans, the boot camps, the short-term training plans, the magic pills, supplements, things like that. Add them all up and compare that to investing into having the knowledge for a change that you can take forwards for the rest of your life. It will be a drop in the ocean. And then it's also important to calculate how much you spend on things that you have higher priorities than your health. So sit down, calculate what you value more than your health, and all of the things that you're calculating. So your house, cars, computers, technology, electronics, they're all things that you're going to lose or you won't be able to use when your health gets to a point of deterioration. So it's important to think about that. And it also comes back to learning how to focus on the delayed gratification. So thinking about the long term rather than the instant and the short term. What can I do now that is going to help me in 5 years, 10 years, 2 decades? Okay, so you've got to think about that delayed gratification. So we've gone through quite a lot there. I'm going to conclude, and I'm just going to try and round up with a couple of key points, and then I'm going to open up to any questions or any comments that people might have. So basically, all of those barriers that we've gone through there to creating long-term progress will probably boil down to these 4 points, or these 4 points will have a massive, massive impact on those. Habits are king, number 1. Willpower will only get you so far, and habits are what are going to change you long term. So that is probably going to be the one key thing that is going to be the difference between yo-yoing up and down, making short-term progress, but then going backwards and actually making a change, keeping it, and just progressing. Number 2, you've got to hold your own health and your own happiness in high regard. Or like I said, find somebody who will hold you and yours higher than you do. Number 3, external factors are just bonus byproducts of internal factors. So the external factors are body shape, the number on the scales, are bonus, great byproducts of feeling good. The internal factors, better mood, better energy levels, and enjoyment. And finally, number 4, education is empowering. The moment you stop learning and developing, you're going backwards. And this took me a long time to realize, especially after university. Thought I had everything that I needed. So the importance of seeking a coach, seeking a mentor, spending some time on self-learning to empower you with that knowledge, that's going to skyrocket your life and your mindset. So I hope you've all enjoyed that and found that useful. Hopefully we've started. It's going to be a process. Like I said, it's a skill, changing your lifestyle. So just